everybody. Welcome to our presentation today. Excited to get to speak with everybody and discuss the top 5 steps to help you finding the best business school for you. So we're going to wait just a few minutes to get folks in the room and give them time to join. So while we're here, please use the comments as we go through. If you have any questions along the way, I'm happy to answer them. For right now, why doesn't everybody check in and tell me where you're watching from? All right, so while we wait for everybody to kind of join us. Oh, okay, awesome. Yay. Okay, now so folks are telling us. Hello from India, Baku. Oh, this is exciting. Lots of exciting people are joining us today. So this presentation is going to really talk about MBA programs across the globe. So no matter where you're looking to study in the future, we're going to be here to kind of talk about your different options, whether you're applying this year, next year, or into the future. So excited to chat with you guys. Excellent. Looking for round 1. This is a perfect time. Excellent. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, Amajit, for getting the presentation set up. So hi, everyone. My name is Jen Turchnow, and I am the CEO of ARINGO MBA admissions consulting firm. And we've been around for about 20 years. And today we're going to be talking about 5 steps to find not just the best business school, but the best business school for you. And so we're going to kind of dive into that today. And before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit more about ARINGO and how we usually help our clients through the process. So we usually work with our clients on what we call like a full school package process, and that's completely inclusive and unlimited. And so helping clients with determining which schools they should apply to, help them plan out the process, because can be lengthy, working on your CV, your essays, and really honing in your application to show each one of these specific schools who you are and why you're a good fit for their program. So in a nutshell, that's how we do it. So a little bit more there. You can always look at our website to learn more about ARINGO, but basically we've been around for 20 years. We know MBA programs, we know what they're looking for, and we know how to help you get into these top MBA programs. Some of our stats, we've helped over 4,000 applicants get accepted to the top programs. Again, we have audited results posted to our website so you can see those. And then for today, we're going to talk a little bit about MBA programs in general. Again, the audience can be coming from a wide variety of folks that maybe are just now deciding that an MBA might be something they want to do. So I'm going to talk about the different types of MBAs that are available, who the top MBA programs are, and how you choose where you want to apply to. And then after that, we're going to step into those 5 steps of finding the best B school for you. And then after that, I'll talk about all this research that you did to find the right school, how you use it in your application, and then how to get admitted. And then after that, we'll have Q&A. Along the way, I'll double check the comment section to see if I can answer any questions along the way. If I don't, please don't hesitate to repost your questions at the end, okay? All right, so I'm going to double check the comments right now and see if there's anything I can answer before we get started. Okay, awesome. It looks like people are definitely looking, a lot of people looking for round 1 for fall 24 start. So that's perfect. Yay. Okay, great. So we'll get started. Okay, so there's different types of MBA programs, and in the end, all of them have the same exact degree. The only difference is the experience you have while you're in the MBA program. So most of the time, like when you're looking at GMAT Club or like Googling anything or searching for anything about MBAs, most of the time they're going to be talking about a full-time MBA program. That's the most common one that's talked about, and that is kind of the mainstream. And those can either come in a 1 year or a 2 year format. In the US, frequently it's a 2 year program. And abroad, it's usually a 1 year program, or abroad in Europe, UK, Asia, like the other MBA programs are typically going to be 1 year. So the full-time MBA program typically is for folks that have a minimum of 2 to 3 years of work experience at the time that they are applying. And then when they matriculate or start the program, hopefully they're going to have 3 to 4 years of work experience. And then that range can go up to 4 to 6 years maximum. I'll say that most full-time MBA programs will max out at 10 years. With the M7, you'll see much more like closer to like that 5 to 7 years of work experience. And they're a little bit more discerning about that. And the reason is because a full-time MBA is going to have core curriculum that's focused on somebody who doesn't have a ton of years of experience. That's when we start moving into the executive MBA or senior 1 year program. And so those programs are more highlighted towards people who have already gotten to kind of manager or a director level, and they're looking to make that jump. So that's when you start looking at an executive MBA or even this kind of middle ground of a senior 1 year MBA program. Other types of programs that you can also be interested in are part-time programs, or online programs, or some schools do offer a hybrid of both. And so those are definitely fantastic options. The part-time programs do allow you to work, which is usually a big concern for folks when it comes to finances. So MBAs usually are for people who are looking to either switch careers or to kind of ratchet up or to keep propelling themselves forward, or maybe they're looking to start their own business, or sometimes people take a career break and they're like, man, I've done a lot and I've worked really hard, but like, is this what I want to do? And so they take some me time to do an MBA, upskill, and then make that decision as to what their direction is. Am I going to continue in this path, or am I going to pivot out and do something different? So obviously another big thing when we talk about MBAs is, what's my return on investment? So when will you start to earn your money back, right? So usually it's between 3 to 5 years of work experience. It definitely depends on the school, the financing, those types of parts, as well as scholarships, to determine like when you start to get your money back out of that. And that's the financial side of things. When we talk about the experience itself, you're really going to be finding your purpose, being able to determine your career path, have international experience, grow your network, and really get to have this experience as an adult versus a college student, and really expand your horizons and who you are and what you want to do. And I think those are the things that start paying off, like even on orientation. So those are the types of things that you can get from an MBA that technically aren't financial rewards, but they're definitely going to be personal and professional rewards. Okay. Pooja, you're wondering about 10 years of experience, and you are definitely eligible for 1 year MBAs. And we can also talk about that as well. In an offline conversation, I'll definitely share my contact information, and we can always talk about 1 year MBAs, as well as MIM. Yes. So MIMs are essentially kind of masters in management, and those are kind of like almost like a pre-MBA program. They're masters, but they usually have candidates with 0 to 2-3 years of work experience, depending on the program. And if you're really wanting to get that management experience and leadership experience before you step into the workforce or before you continue, masters in management can be a great option as well. And so just so you know that, this this presentation, technically talks about finding the best. We talk a lot about MBA, but this applies to any of your master's programs, more specifically the business side, but you can use these techniques for any type of graduate program. So here we're going to touch really quickly on top universities. So you might hear people talk about M7. They'll talk about T10, which means top 10. Ivy League. Here's your top schools that most people are looking at when we're talking about MBAs. So Stanford, Harvard, Wharton, or HSW, Booth, MIT, and Columbia, as well as Kellogg are going to finish out the M7. Darden is a fantastic up and coming school that continues to grow in the rankings, and is usually between top 12 to top 10. Haas, another fantastic program. Yale School of Management, Cornell, NYU. Those programs both also actually have one-year MBAs that are focused on tech. So really cool programs there. And then we're finishing out with UCLA, Tuck, and Michigan Ross. So tons of amazing schools. This is just a quick glimpse into the top schools as far as US goes. When we go to European schools, we're looking at LBS, INSEAD, HEC Paris, IMD, and some of the folks that we were talking about 10 years of work experience. A couple of these programs are going to be really well suited for folks with more of the 7+ years of work experience, and they offer a quicker return on an investment because they're only 1 year. So you're only investing that 1 year in the curriculum out of the workspace, plus you get a lot of experience and get the whole MBA within that 1 year, and be able to kind of start that career a little bit faster. Great option if you're wanting to move abroad and work abroad, or move to a different country. This is definitely a great option to get well-footed in that country, as well as finding those business contacts instead of trying to move there without any sort of connections in the beginning. Okay, so asking about MIM programs. So MIM programs, they're pretty much at most business schools are going to have a MIM program of some sorts. There's a bit of a profile evaluation. Sam, we can talk a little bit more about your specific experience offline as well. But you can also consider a full-time MBA. A 1-year MBA might be a little bit easier. And obviously these European schools might also be a great option for you. Is 2 years of work experience enough for a full-time MBA? So that's on the the lower end of years of experience required for an MBA. You may want to consider a master's in management, Manish. But I think it all depends on your specific profile. Let's say you technically graduated 2 years ago, but you've been running your own business throughout college, or you have a family business that you've been a part of. It could be a different story. Some schools are a little bit more oriented towards younger candidates, including Canada. They do really seem to be more oriented towards our younger candidates. So great options there. Okay, so now let's get to this. How are you going to choose an MBA? There's a lot of things that we need to kind of consider. Most of that is, what are your career aspirations, and where are they best served? What kind of school, location? That's kind of what we're looking at. What are you wanting to do after you graduate, and where do you want to be? So you want to look at the location, you can look at school rankings, the cost of the program, but there's some other things you might want to look at. Each program is going to also have the ability for specializations, whether that comes in actual, with a 2-year MBA program, you typically have a core plus a specialization or two, or concentration. So you can kind of say oh, I want to focus on entrepreneurship and business analytics. And so those are, two options you can kind of deep dive within your electives for that program. If it's a 1-year program, you're going to have the core plus a couple of electives specifically, usually in one area. So those are the things you need to consider as far as curriculum goes. You can also look at who's recruiting at those schools, what are their teaching methods, and then also kind of class size. They can range from 1,000 students at HBS to 300 students or less at Haas. So you really want to know how many people are going to be in your cohort, what that culture is. Are you going to really get to make deep, meaningful relationships? Or are you a person that's really more excited about the more people you know, the larger your network is, and the more you can leverage later on? So that's a little bit about how to start looking at what MBA programs have to offer and what you need to consider. Really quickly, some questions we have coming in. Is it 3 years of a professional gap? So any gap in employment is going to be important to discuss. The committees are going to wonder what happened during that time, and really it's up to you to share that story. And whether that's, with COVID, I think like everything has kind of changed to where admissions committees are a lot more open to hearing those kind of, not those, but like they're open to hearing different stories and scenarios and understanding what's happened. But they're also looking for what you did during that time. So how are you productive? What were you doing? How has that served you in the future is more of what they're looking for. Okay, 321, a good score. We can talk about GMAT GRE scores kind of towards the end of the presentation. 321 is a great score. I think, especially with your quant as 170, fantastic. But, that all depends on the specific school. So we can talk about that towards the end. And right now we're going to start diving into those 5 steps to help you find the best B school for you. So the first part of this process is thinking about your resources. So, what do you have at hand? Then we'll talk about the curriculum, and then we'll dive into what an employment report looks like and what you should be looking for. And then we're going to talk about how you network with students and alumni, and then finding your spot on campus in the clubs or activities. And then again, after that, we'll talk about how we use that research. All right, so resources that you have available to you as a potential candidate. So obviously, you can go to the website and learn a lot about these schools. And I'll tell you that if you look at it from a marketing perspective, when you see the words that the school has put onto the website, so like innovation, leadership, experiential learning, labs, like those types of things are telling you what they're depicting about their program and what's special. So, if you're just kind of starting this process, look at the website and see what keywords they keep on drawing out throughout their marketing in this website, because this is what they're trying to communicate to you. And then hopefully you can reflect back on them. So you can get a lot of details there. Then you can always reach out to the recruitment and admissions teams. So they're going to host webinars on campus, off campus events. They're going to attend MBA fairs and such. And so they're going to host that. And they're always looking to connect with potential students. They want to make sure that you know who they are, and that if it's a school you're interested in, that you're a good fit for them, because they don't want you to waste your time exploring a program or applying to a program if it's not a good fit for both you and them, because then you've kind of wasted some time and money applying to something that doesn't exactly make sense. So you should not be afraid to reach out to admissions committees. Now, I know that a lot of people are intimidated by that, but here's kind of the easiest way to kind of start making those connections. So if you attend a school's webinar, typically they're going to have an admissions representative or an alumni or student as part of that webinar. They're always going to give you some sort of contact information at the end. Go ahead and use that information to make the connection. So after somebody gets done doing their webinar, you can like this, and you say, hey, Jen, I saw your webinar today. I really enjoyed learning a lot about the program. I have a couple of specific questions. Can we set up a time to chat? And so they'll either offer the ability for you to set up a a Zoom call, or they might say, yeah, go ahead and ask me, go ahead and ask your questions over email and I'm happy to answer them quickly for you. Or they might point you in the direction of somebody who can. It's important that when you're interacting with anyone from the university, that you are not asking them questions that you can already find on the website. So what kind of concentrations do you have? Well, those are things that you can really tell on the website already. So, ask them interesting questions, ask them about experience as well. So you want to, show that you've already done some of your research. And so if you're going to ask somebody post webinar for time to chat, then you want to ask them something more than what you saw on the webinar itself. And you can even say, like, I have a very interesting situation at a 3-year gap, and I'd like to talk to you about, what the admissions team's view is on that, or what questions they may have asked that I can answer in my application. You have the employment report. So again, we'll go over what the employment report looks like. You can see what the typical employers are, the different sectors and functions, and kind of what kind of money they're going to make. And this is important, especially when we're talking about career outcomes. We want to make sure that this is a good fit for you. And so, each one of these schools has their own personality, their own special sector that they're kind of known for. So we just want to make sure that's a good match for you. The next thing is MBA fairs. I love MBA fairs. Now, it's amazing if you like to talk to people, but it's a great way to really get to know a lot of different schools in one setting. And for the most part, it's going to be somewhat anonymous. So you can typically ask a lot of questions and not feel kind of silly about it when you're at these fairs, because that's what they're there for. They might scan your badge or ask you your name, but honestly, they're going to meet thousands of people on the tour when they're MBA fairs typically are on tours and they go in different segments. So they might go throughout the entire US over the course of 3 months. And so that recruiter that you're meeting at that event is likely going to meet, thousands of people in that few 3 months. And so, yes, you might want them to remember you, but and there's ways to make that happen, again, with follow-up conversations, emails, etc. But it's also an opportunity to say, I haven't heard much about Ross MBA. Can you tell me more about it? And not feel like, oh, I didn't do my research, or feel nervous about things, because likely they won't even remember you specifically, but they will put your information into the CRM. And that's the important part, is that they see that you've participated and engaged with their university. Beyond that, current students and alumni are amazing resources. We'll dive into how to speak with them. And then there's also lots of places like GMAT Club to see where people have posted their opinions about specific schools, this school versus that school. The comparison articles, the blogs, my student experience. There's so many places to kind of, do an initial search of who is the best school for consulting, or whatever you might want to find. There's a lot of places that you can look online and see that. So those are a bit of our resources that we're going to be using. Real quick, do you think that AdComs are the best judges to decide that we are the best fit the program or not? So 2 layers to that. So the AdCom is going to see what you present to them, and it's your job to present to them how you are a good fit. So if you're saying I should submit my application to every school and then they can say whether I'm a good fit or not, that's a little less aggressive, as far as you have thousands of candidates that are submitting their applications for these schools, and they're only going to select maybe 300 or 1,000 people out of the 3,000 or 8,000 that might apply. So if you're coming from an overrepresented population, or even just in general, maybe your GMAT score isn't as high as the average, or GRE score, whatever it might be, it's your job to build this connection. And that's, kind of the same thing as looking for a job is that you want to emulate what they want to see and how that's a good fit. And for you, if you've done your research, if it's a good fit for you. And I mean, like, everybody's going to be like, absolutely, HBS is going to be a fantastic place for me to go to school. And I'm definitely going to get employed after I graduate. But do you thrive in a really large environment that's pretty competitive, in a case study heavy, curriculum? That might not be for you. You might want to be much more of, somebody who's in a smaller class, different cohort where you're going to know everybody and it feels like a family. You might also want to be on a college campus where you're kind of secluded and everybody's in this community together. I would say Boston could be college campus of many schools. But like, if we look at Duke, they are, kind of all by themselves in Durham. You get your own kind of community there. Darden's another one. Tuck's one of those. Cornell is another one with Ithaca. Like, those are like legit college towns where you get that nice experience of having an intimate experience between you and your cohort. Whereas if you're in the city, like at Stern or Columbia, or even at LBS in London, where everybody's going to step out of class and then they have a million options of things to do, you might not get to connect with everybody. Okay, that was a bit of a tangent. All right, so next, we want to review the curriculum. So when you look at the curriculum of each one of these schools, it can be found on the website. They can give you a lot of information in person, but you kind of want to look at it in different ways. So you could have a flexible curriculum. So like Columbia, or I'm sorry, not Columbia, but Booth, they kind of have like we call it like a choose your own adventure curriculum, where essentially they have very few specific classes you have to take, and then you customize your curriculum to fit your career goals and what you want to experience, which is really fantastic for somebody who might be in a really niche field that might not do well with a very established, standardized curriculum. And so, that flexibility at Booth could be something that really is amazing and really help you flourish. Whereas if you're kind of stepping into the MBA and saying, I need a lot of guidance, give me the structure of like, this is our core, and then you can have specializations that are already set up for you. And they might say, here, if you want the specialization, here's 6 classes you need to take to get this specialization or concentration. Then obviously there's the case study approach, which most people know, but essentially this is a hands-on moment where your professor is going to give you a lot of homework of reading these different cases. Then when you come to class or as a project, you and your team are going to come up with solutions on what they should do. And then ultimately the professor will tell you what happened. And then you guys will explore if what you kind of pitched was a good idea or not. All right. So then the other thing is experiential learning. So learning by doing. So there's some schools that really emphasize this. Ross is one of them. They have a MAP program, which is specifically going into different businesses locally and being able to make an impact. This also happens with Darden. There's quite a few schools that talk about experiential learning or learning labs, where you're going to get this hands-on experience working for a specific company to solve a specific problem, which gives you a lot of ownership and the ability to kind of, I want to say safely, experience this versus go out into the real world and maybe failing about that, or failing at it work-wise, and then, losing your job over something like that, or, not being able to, continue to grow professionally. And then the other thing that you want to consider is the faculty. So the faculty are going to be the people that help prepare you for what's coming next. And so MBA curricula or MBA faculty typically are professionals. They have worked out in the field and they have amazing and tremendous experience that they're going to bring into the classroom learning, and they're going to teach you about that experience while also applying theory. Yep. Yeah. Dine, yes. MIT is also experiential. And so the faculty are the people that are going to have this real world experience, bring it into the classroom, help you dissect it, and then how do you apply it to different theories or different experiences. I mean, we have so much going on. Brexit, quote unquote, a recession in the US, COVID, like there's so many things that we can break down and see what is going on and what has happened and how businesses responded and how they should have responded. And the faculty are going to help guide you through that process. So it's good to know who they are. And if you are in a specific field that, you know, like if sustainability is your thing and this is where you want to be, then you want to look for professors that have the sustainability experience or top ranking or research, whatever you might want to, like whatever you feel like is most valuable to you and to your future. So Anjay, you said that every school talks about their curriculum being case-based. How can we compare among them? Yeah, good question, right? So case-based is kind of like what I was just sharing. There are some other, I guess, like methods or processes. In the end, what you want to know is, what does that really mean for this specific school? And you can talk to current students and see what that means. Like, what does the case study really do or case method do? Why is that important to what you're learning and how is that applied? Most of the time, programs will have they'll have webinars that are based on their curriculum. And that's a great way to take a deep dive into that specific school and see how they apply the case method or whatever it might be. So it's hard to say, like, how do you compare them? Most of the time it's going to be experiential. How do they apply that? How do they have you as the students in the class approach the different scenarios and the cases, and how do people learn from them and how do they apply them? So other resources, like I said, webinars, there's a ton of them, especially everybody's kind of has everything virtual at this point. But you can also do class visits. So, I mean, I know that it's sometimes hard for international travel, but let's say you live in the country or maybe you're visiting that country and you're wanting to, you know, get to know the school. You can always reach out to the school and find out if they have any scheduled class visits or if they would allow you to sit in on a class. And sometimes they'll allow you to sit down on a virtual class as well. So there's a lot of different ways, especially with COVID, and I'll reference this again, it has made the MBA admissions process so much more accessible for potential candidates to get to know the schools. So one positive moment from the pandemic is that things are a lot more accessible and they do find ways to help allow you as an international student or somebody from afar to be able to really get to know the different schools and experiences. So look out for those resources as we go. All right. So the next thing I would say that is important for determining if a school is right for you is we've already looked at the curriculum. Okay, awesome. You know, they do have, they do the case method and it's a good school for consulting. And consulting, I feel like it's such a loose term and that's what everybody is really interested in for the most part. And so they're like, it's an easy one to kind of hone in for right now. So when we look at the employment statistics, we want to look at how many people were looking for a job and how many of them were found a job within, 30 days, 90 days, or 3 months, 6 months. And so schools are ranked on this. And this is the important part of an employment report is that every school needs to have their candidates employed within 90 days, or else that starts kind of counting against them as far as the rankings go. So when we look at the employment report, we want to see that that current students or past students are getting jobs at the companies and the sectors and the functions that you're looking for, because if they're not, one, it might not be a good fit for you. Two, if you're applying to their school and they don't have a lot of hiring in that sector, like HR, that's like it's a really hard one to kind of fit. Like when people talk about like, oh, I want to go into HR, that's not necessarily something that comes up on an employment report specifically. So pitching HR is not necessarily the right thing for many schools because they don't have a category for it. So you want to pitch something more like general management, and then you can kind of say, I want to go into general management in tech, or I want to go to product management or project management. That's something that's much more tangible to an MBA committee for them to see if you're going to be employed post MBA. So things that you're going to look for on this employment report, and I mean, honestly, like I say Google, but any platform is good. But, get on the search engine and type in the MBA program. So you can type in Harvard MBA employment report, and it should come right up. And either they're going to have a link to the website with a dynamic website where you can see, like INSEAD has a really dynamic one where you can click on everything and go through it, or where you can download a statistical report. This is what they're sending over to the ranking. So it's already prepared. Every school should have this, and it should be accessible for you as a candidate applying to the programs. So you want to look at the students who are looking for employment, how many of them reported that they got job offers, and then you also want to see what they did as far as like how many of them might be returning to company. So a lot of the times, especially like M7, they're for a full-time 2-year MBA program, there are employers that are sending their candidates to, or their employees to the MBA program and are sponsored. So if there's a large number of sponsored candidates, you could easily kind of throw off the statistics in your mind and say like, oh, but like a large percentage were actually sponsored. So they're also included in the employed percentage. And you're like, but wait, that's not fair. They already had it lined out. So just something to be aware of. And then we want to look at how many people are in your specialization, your function, or the sector, and then who the typical recruiters are. So this is Wharton's employment report. And it might be a little bit hard to decide or hard to see, but I just wanted to kind of show you guys what you need to be looking for. So if we look over in the function side of things, you can see different parts like analytics, business development, consulting. And again, like consulting is an easy one because it's one of the larger ones. And so we can see that, 29% got an internship and 32% got a job offer. So, a third of the class went into consulting and were gainfully employed, right? So general management, you can see that as well. A lower percentage, 5.7%, but there are employment statistics. If we continue to go down, you'll see private equity, 16% were employed post MBA. So that's great. And then, again, like here's a really big one, sustainability. So the one at the very bottom of the screen, you can see only 0.2% went into sustainability, and they didn't have a salary available. So if you're wanting to go into sustainability, there's a lot to kind of break down in that one in general, but this might be a little bit of a red flag for you. And you want to say, is Wharton the right place for me? And it absolutely can be, because people, it can be confusing. But you look at this and say like, oh, there's not many people that go into sustainability, but they may go into sustainability consulting. So it might be also included in the consulting results. So, a little bit of insight there. You can also always speak to, again, students and alumni and the admissions committee to get to know a little bit more about where those statistics come from. Next, you want to look at who their common employers are. So, just as much as you want to make sure that you see employers that you want to work for on this employment report, you want to reflect that in your application as well, because the admissions committee wants to have a good thought of like, yeah, we can see her working at Amazon, or we can see them working at Citibank or JP Morgan, because they commonly recruit here and we can see them getting a job there. So I would pay attention to that and see if these companies make sense to you. If you have specific companies that are not on here, one, you want to find out where they are, what schools are actually or have a strong recruiting line for that specific company. But it also might say that not as many people take the MBA route to get there, but you absolutely can get to most any employer from the MBA. But it means that you might have to do a lot more legwork to get where you want to be on your own, working with the Career Center and finding your own job leads. So just again, food for thought there. All right. So the next step in the MBA hunt is speaking with current students and alumni. And again, like this can be somewhat intimidating, or a lot of the times, like when I tell or ask, students like, hey, have you spoken with anybody from the MBA program? They're like, what am I going to say? Or what am I going to do? And so, it's these questions that you want to ask them are more experiential. And so talking to current students, they can give you a lot better of a feel of what the feeling is on campus, the recruiting activities. And again, like during COVID or like post-COVID, or even now during tech layoffs and such, you can talk to, current students to find out, what's happening, who is on campus, what companies are going to be recruiting, those types of things. But then you can also talk to them about what they do outside of class and what that looks like. Do you have specific events and activities that you participate with your cohort? And what's that feeling like? Because I need to know if I'm going to be a good fit there. So great way to talk to current students. When you talk to alumni, depending on how far away their graduation was, you can ask them about their overall experience, but then the real place or the real thing that you want to get from alumni is, how did this help professionally? Like, you've graduated, now what has happened? How did you get your job? How have you progressed? How can, this help me in the next steps? And, how have you utilized your network, and how have you seen, this specific, school abroad, like Darden talks a lot about their international alumni data or alumni network. And so you can talk to them like, how has Darden helped you with this next step, or anything else that they can share. And then I think that also you can look for advice and hindsight, right? Like, what would you have done differently? What did you like the most about your experience? Or, like 5 years later, what do you recall? And so this is how you kind of have conversations with these two different groups. Obviously, you can ask them anything you want, but if you're kind of anxious and don't know exactly what to ask, here's some great bullet points. Next, I think that this is the bigger part of things, is finding your place on campus, right? Like, so if you envision that, like, you're going to get the academics that you need, the employment report lines up, you want to make sure that you're a good fit, because you're investing 1 to 2 years of your life there on campus, and you want to make sure it's a good fit for you socially, and it helps you thrive. So you can talk to ambassadors, and they're well skilled on what to talk about. They get training from the admissions teams to kind of help people learn more about the program. But then I would also look at the student clubs and organizations. So most of the time, if you go to an MBA's website, if you go to Student Life, they'll kind of have a drop down of the student clubs and organizations, or they might just highlight a few. And from there, you can see the different clubs and see if any of them feel like a good fit for you. And you can even reach out to the people who are listed on the website as like the president. Most of the times they will have some sort of email address or something where you can contact them. And then if, again, like sustainability. So like, let's say again, like you're interested in Wharton and you feel like, wow, the employment report didn't show anything about sustainability. Like, what does this mean? But obviously, like, Wharton has a sustainability club. So reach out to the sustainability club and say, hey, I'm a prospective student looking to apply next year. I'm really interested in sustainability, but when I look at the employment report, I don't really see that reflected. Like, tell me what kind of jobs and companies are people working in with sustainability? And the honest thing is that essentially when you pitch sustainability, you want to pitch it within a sector or function and within organizations that already exist. For the most part, that's how you're going to achieve sustainability roles post MBA. But the clubs will tell you and give you more direction. Some of these clubs are going to help organize different forums and expos, like those kinds of things. And you can see what type of leadership opportunities there are for you. Women in business, that's a big one. So usually there's some sort of like women in business weekend or event each year. And you'll see, that's something that you could say that you're really interested in being part of. Beyond that, specialized centers and paths. So, a lot of people want to go into entrepreneurship and family, or they're coming from family business, and schools offer those centers that are outside of the actual MBA itself. But let's say like Kellogg, MIT, like they have these different centers that you can be a part of that have their own entrepreneurship labs, where you can actually participate in challenges, not just in the business side, but then also like maybe even like working with people from like biology or whatever it might be, to kind of collaborate across campus to really pursue some different options and competitions while you're in your MBA program that are a little bit outside. Case competitions, this is probably one of the coolest things about being an MBA, is that you're not only part of your school and your cohort, but you're part of this kind of classification of like MBAs, where you have the ability to network across different schools. Case competitions and then major groups are part of that ability to network across different schools. So case competitions are really cool, and you have the opportunity to really connect with them. Beyond that, there are some specific affinity organizations that do go across all MBAs and that have more of like a national or an international office that helps with programming. So Forte Foundation is focused on women in business and allies. Consortium is focused on minority leadership, and that's on the domestic side. So that consortium is a US-based program. Ramba is the Reaching Out MBA for the LGBTQ community. Tiogo is for another diversity organization that helps support candidates through their MBA, as well as MLT, Minority Leadership Team training, so that you can also join that as part of your application process. Some of these programs actually have ways to engage ahead of time and potentially apply for some sort of fellowship or scholarship through as well. And then if you are in the military, whether that's like across the board from military from any country, your MBA program or school itself will have some sort of Veterans Affairs club plus an office, so that you can, find people who also were in a similar spot. MBAs are really great places for folks to transition from military life to civilian life and apply those skills. And so they want to help make sure that you have that community. So you can always look out for the Veterans Affairs. Okay, so questions are pretty light right now. So hopefully I'm not too boring. So now we're at the point where we're going to talk about how do we utilize the things that we just talked about. So how are you going to use your research in all these different categories in your actual application? Because you've done a lot of work. Now let's pay it forward, put it in your application to show these schools why they are your number one choice. So in your essays, your interview, you want to infuse the fact that you've done your research. And you can always include conversations that you've had with specific people. In speaking with Rachel and so, I learned about this specific class and how it helps you do X, Y, Z, right? And again, like we'll go back to sustainability, where you saw on the employment report for Wharton that there was less than 2% went into quote unquote sustainability, but you did your research, and now from speaking with so-and-so from the Sustainability Club or the Net Impact Club at Wharton that these specific companies are recruiting for positions, and that's what you're looking for. So you want to reflect this in your essays. Again, any sort of characterization of leadership, some of those buzzwords, and I say buzzword lightly. So again, things are words or characteristics that the school is putting in their marketing is what they're reflecting about their program, and you want to emulate that in your essays and your interview. Another thing that you can get from all this hard work are student endorsements. So some applications will ask you what kind of communication or interactions have you had with our community. So you could put down webinars, but then, anytime you talk about a current student or alumni, it is human nature to build some sort of correlation or association with that person. So if you can say, I talked to so-and-so who is the president of this club and learned about all these great things I can do with the Women in Business Club, then they're going to automatically kind of start to draw parallels between that person's leadership and experience and you, and say like, if you have batchmates or other folks from your school who have attended the program and are alumni or current students, again, they're going to draw parallels between you and them. Oh, so-and-so worked here and they worked at the same place that this person works at, and they did really well in the program and had a good time and made an impact. And so we can imagine them doing the same. So you can, get those student endorsements or kind of inflect them or infer to them in your essays as well. You can also gain alumni letters of support. And then some of these schools, Cornell is a really great one, that if you attend their webinars, you could get an application fee waiver, which is fantastic. So again, like this is a very fast version of this, but we want to use all the research that we've done on these schools to be able to put it back into your application. All right, so that was everything I had to share for your 5 steps in how to select the top business school for you. So tell me, what questions do you have? How can I help? I'm going to take a few minutes or a few seconds to kind of read through and see what questions I might have missed along the way. So Anjay, you talked about every school. Oh no, we already talked about that one. Can we do a profile evaluation for INSEAD MBA app for me? Yes, I can absolutely do that. My contact information is here. Email me. When you email me your resume and what schools you're interested in. And if you have a GMAT or GRE score, that's also helpful, as well as kind of what your short-term and long-term goals are post-MBA. That'll be helpful for me to get to answer you more effectively and efficiently in your profile evaluation. Let's see. What else? Okay, so Shashwita, you had a question about your GPA. So undergrad and post-bac or post-grad, you had 2 different GPAs. And so technically they're going to average them all together and give you an overall GPA. So a little bit about GPAs and how MBA programs kind of put them together is when you submit your application, you have to do the really fun part of translating your transcripts to their system and upload every single class and the grade that you got. It's not the fun part, but what happens is it goes to the graduate school, and the graduate school is going to process your application kind of at face value. Then it goes to the business school, and the business school has a whole rubric, how they judge everybody, and their own calculations for how they could provide an overall score for your application in these, specific areas. And so they're going to take your GPA from undergrad as well as your PGP or PGD, and they're going to put them into kind of an overall academic score for you to be able, for the committee to be able to see. So if you felt like the 2.8 was a major concern, or something happened, it's okay to write an optional essay that's 2 to 3 sentences that really just shares with the committee. You'll see in my undergrad that my GPA was lower. I had X, Y, and Z problem. This is what I learned from it. And you can see in my PGP that I was able to overcome these issues or utilize the resources and be able to move forward. So that, kind of the PGP or post-grad GPA being higher shows them that that you've learned your lessons from what happened before, whether that's using your resources, asking for help, or recovering, like that this was really related to a specific medical issue or life event. And you can see that, without that, I'm doing much better. And then, a strong GMAT or GRE score would also kind of help cement that as well. So a short 2 to 3 sentences of, you can see as evidenced in my PGP and my GMAT or GRE score that that I am capable of the academics in this program, the rigor of the program. I'm trying to see. I don't think I missed any others from before, but if I didn't answer your question before now, please repost it. So we will go down. Are there any differences in essays between people from Japan and people from the US when I apply for top MBA programs in the US? Any resources to know about historic data in the category of scholarship numbers? Are there any differences in essays between people? And I'm not sure that there are any differences that I can think of. The only thing, sometimes there's colloquialisms. So I remember one time we were reviewing the video recordings that people have to do. Sometimes, like some MBA programs will require you to do what's called a Cura interview, and it's generally some basic questions. And one of the questions that somebody asked was, what will you be bringing to the MBA program? And so what that meant is, like, what kind of skills, experiences, and etc. And that didn't translate. And somebody said that they'll be bringing their laptop. So sometimes that happens. And so, but for essays, everything is going to be clearly translated for you. Like, there's no issue there. The only time I've ever seen that kind of like disconnect between what was asked and what was they were looking for was whenever it was a person delivering a question, and usually that's in an interview format. And so you can always ask somebody to rephrase if you felt like you didn't understand the question, or they'll redirect you if you're not giving them the answer they're looking for. So are there any resources to know the historic data of category of scholarships, number of students that were offered scholarships from each school? Okay, so there are some folks that used to do this, and I believe it was MBA Guru, it was something like that. There was a person who would do a lot of the statistical analysis, but in the end, I don't think that anybody wanted to pay for the research they did. So then they stopped doing it. And so I think that stopped probably close to like 2018 or 19. So you might be able to find some sort of historical data that way. But you can, like on GMAT Club, I think a lot of there's definitely some breakdowns that you can look at per school. And I know that some people look at the data and are able to start building tables with you to be able to see that. So we can kind of see what you're looking for. But beyond that, I really don't have any specific information because usually scholarships are confidential. I already have a GR score of 321. So, Shashwata, like, I think that your GRE score can be strong. Again, with that quant of 170, again, like, depending on the story that you have and the schools you're applying to, 321 can be great. I think when we're talking about T10, top 10 or top 15 programs, M7, 321 is a little bit lower. They're usually around 330. So, depending on your list, you might want to change it up or retake it. Sam, what would be a competitive GRE score for any male engineers? Nope, I didn't answer this yet. And Shwata, you had that question too. So I really wish that this wasn't the case, but it's really competitive for Indian candidates. It's just a very large applicant pool and differentiating yourself. So the average GRE scores for M7 is definitely closer to 330. So if you're in that 325 range, 325 to 330, you definitely can be admissible. When we start going down towards 320, it can be a case-by-case situation depending on what kind of experience you're bringing to the table, as that question comes again, or that phrase. But it depends on what the experience is and the career progression and such. If it's somewhat common as a male engineer, I don't know if you've had a lot of leadership along the way. You might want to beef it up a little bit and see if you can get closer to the 330, or even take the practice exam for the GMAT and see if maybe you do better there. And I would also give that advice to you, Shwata, because if your quant score is that great, like maybe verbal isn't your thing. So taking the GMAT, which is a bit more quant focused and less, again, like all of this is at face value. I am not an expert in GMAT GRE, but from what I know is that GMAT is much more oriented towards those that have like a quant heavy background and quant skills, whereas GRE is much more oriented towards like those with heavy or high verbal experience or high verbal scores. So you might want to flip and try the other one. I know that the GMAT, and again, I am no expert about this, but I know GMAT is reformatting and coming out with a whole new experience. So depending on dates and such, you might want to wait for that or go ahead and take the GMAT that already is existing. All right, so that was a lot about that. Any other questions you guys have that I can answer for you? Okay, so beyond that, again, I'm happy to chat with anybody offline about their profile, questions about schools. If you have some questions, follow-up questions to any of the 5 steps that I talked about today, I'm happy to answer them offline. Email me. We can always set up a time to chat afterwards. But yeah, oh, perfect. So thanks, Abhijit. So if you have any questions, I'm here to help. All right, so we'll take a few more seconds. And if anybody has any questions, now is the time to ask them. Oh, okay. All right, so there's a question about CGPA being, so I know that CGPA doesn't always calculate well or translate well when it comes to US GPAs, right? Where many schools can offer above a 4.0 in the US. And I know that even having above a 9 CGPA can be, a class topper, right? So I don't think that you necessarily are going to have an issue with an 8.83. I think that if you can give any sort of percentage or rank in your class. That will be helpful with the quote unquote perception of what, people start doing math and translating things. But MBA programs across the board, no matter if it's in the US, UK, Europe, Asia, they know about Indian candidates and the GPA scale and how it's almost impossible to get it anywhere near a perfect 10 out of 10 CGPA. So do you need to add the CFA or the FRM? So honestly, only if it is going to help you in your career for the next steps. If you're going to spend time studying for an exam, put that into the GMAT or GRE. That's what I would say. Unless you're interested in specific schools that offer GMAT, GRE waivers in place of the CFA. There are a few schools that do that. They're not the M7, but there are other schools that do it. I think Rotman might be. There's a couple in Canada and a couple in the UK that would waive it. But I would say for the most part, like CFA is not the easiest thing to do. So I would only do it if you felt like I would definitely need it along with my MBA. Otherwise, I don't think that it's going to give you the weightage that you want, or that it should. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, everybody, thank you again so much for joining us today. It was great to chat with you. Any questions, I'm here to help. Beyond that, I hope you have a great day and good luck in your application process, and I hope to help you. Bye, y'all.